Are you just running them with intro videos behind them?
We the UNSC, we the squad that's here to dominate. Wanna quit them Dutch Crusaders, we the ones you can't debate. Iconic rusty taser, dark ghost, we bring the heat that can't be tamed. Frozen galaxy destroyer, Oogie Boogie stepping into our game. Lieutenant Calvert, yo, we got the strategy. Taking down opponents like it's a necessity. Dashing champions, that's where we headed. No one can stop us, we won't be shredded. Rise to the top, yeah, we're climbing high. UNSC, we're aiming for the sky. No obstacles can get in our way. We're the team that's here to stay. Lightsabers gleaming, SITH are scheming, dark side rising, powers teeming. We strike fear, our wrath is seething, unleash destruction, there's no redeeming. With every step, the galaxy quakes, our power grows like a storm that breaks. We feed on fear, it's the fuel we intake. We bring chaos and darkness in our wake. SITH, rise up, let the darkness ignite. Unleash your fury, let it take flight. Embrace the power of the force inside. We are darkness, the SITH light. Rise up, let the darkness ignite. Unleash your fury, let it take flight. Embrace the power of the force inside. We are darkness, the SITH light.
Okay. Truly, this is a historic moment in the history of Dash League playoffs. We've got intro songs and hype videos, and we've got two wonderful teams going at it today in the Dasher tier. Before we get to introducing the teams, we'll go ahead and introduce ourselves. I'm NotGollum, everybody's favorite commentator. Behind the cams is Jake, and Gravix with me as well in the booth. Say hi, Gravix.
What is up, everybody? Happy to be back for the playoffs. Got some Dasher tier quarterfinals here. So, Gollum, how about you tell us a little bit about these teams in our matchup today?
Well, looky here. So, UNSC is the #1 seeded team in Dasher tier in all of Dash League this season. They have had quite the run this season with more or less this exact lineup here. Sandman, Rusty, Frozen Galaxy, Taser, Crusader, and they've got plenty of other players on their team, but kind of the sticking point is all of the players on their team are top league ready Dashers. And that is hard to beat a roster where any player is going to be good and fit in and well practiced. Over on SITH, they also have had quite the successful run this season. However, a bit of a difficult circumstance, not gonna lie, being matched up against the #1 seed. SITH is bringing War Nurse, Typhoon 25, Jason Bourne, Vune, and Ares of War. All very experienced, very skilled players who are going to be going up the mountain that is UNSC today. And we're going to be taking a look at how well they can do here. It's going to be a bit of a difficult circumstance, though. Gravix, you've seen UNSC play at least a bit this season, and you were around last season too. And
yeah.
they've always been a top team. Have you gotten a chance to see how they've been doing this season?
Yeah, I've been keeping up with the league a little bits and pieces when I can, when life's not in the way. But yeah, UNSC, the powerhouse, we know them as champions in seasons past, looking to get back there this season as well, coming in hopefully for them to the championship. But right now it has to start with the quarterfinals against SITH. But their performances have been insane over this season, past seasons. So I'm excited to see how they perform here, and I'm excited to see how well SITH can come up to them. Obviously, it's going to be an insanely uphill battle, but Gollum, it's going to be very interesting to see how SITH tries to attack the massive threat that's ahead of them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. SITH is a great team. They're in Dasher tier. That is a testament alone to their individual skill and their ability to play together as a team. But they're going to need pretty much anything. Anything but a miracle is going to end in a UNSC victory and a SITH loss here. And I would be extremely surprised if SITH makes checkpoint on this map, quite frankly. There is a chance, though. There is always a chance. That is the #1 thing that I emphasize in any of these fairly one-sided matches. There is always the opportunity that the underdog team somehow pulls something completely unexpected out. Maybe UNSC is having an off day, didn't prepare properly. SITH having the right mindset and game sense here and relying on their players' abilities that have been developing throughout the season to pull them through might be able to bring out such a miracle. That is something that I'm looking forward to today. And we'll just have to wait and see whether or not that happens. But regardless, I think both teams are ready to start just taking pictures of each other right now. Do you want to talk about Canyon a little bit, Gravix? This is a Payload for the first map.
Yeah, so we're starting off with Payload on Canyon, notorious for pre-checks. Especially with UNSC, I assume this was their pick of map, knowing their opponent as SITH. Somebody who hasn't really been in Dasher tier all season, where UNSC has been kind of dominating the entire time, #1 seed. So they picked this one because checkpoint is over 50% through the map on Canyon. And there's some insane cold points that the blue team needs to get through. Speaking of blue team, it's very interesting to see UNSC starting on blue team here. If you notice that, Gollum, as we get going into the match here.
I mean, it makes me question whether or not Canyon actually was their first choice. I'd imagine, since we're going to have Volcano as the Domination later, that would be SITH's choice in trying to have some sort of off-meta pick for the second map with some chance of getting in something unexpected and trying to take a victory here, and UNSC going with the classic. It does surprise me, though, that UNSC has decided to go with blue team first, and they are starting to push the cart right now with Typhoon in the flank here.
Yes, so Typhoon's gonna sit with these shotguns in the flank, which is a very interesting strategy we don't see a lot, but it seems to be paying off as he takes out Crusader, gets into the room here, and takes out Frozen Galaxy as well. Right now, he does have 2 kills, and is playing very strategically with these shotguns. One more left, takes out Crusader on cart again. Sandman does take him out, though, as we see him coming, pushing up a little bit, disrupting, trying to get a couple of picks. Does get taken out by War News, though, as UNSC keeps chugging along towards under the bridge here, as we see in our bottom cam. Now Gollum we're seeing a little bit of an upset, at least coming out from Tigers in the beginning there. Thoughts?
I'd just like to say that is kind of the sticking point that I was talking about earlier, that a team needs to be prepared. That's just because they're the bottom seed in Dasher doesn't mean they're not a Dasher team. And all that being said, the follow-up onto the cart by UNSC has been this top-level consistency that we expect. And just because SITH is surprising us with how much time they're actually eating up this early on against this high-skilled of a team doesn't mean that they're actually going to be able to follow up with anything once we start to get to Rocketeer territory. It's really, in my mind, at this point in the map, the question is, how is the Rocketeer for SITH going to get hits on the cart and survive the push by UNSC, who is going to be trying to outkill their opponents? And thus far, UNSC has not really had a consistent hold on the cart ever since getting stopped here in Rocketeer territory, and I'm wondering whether or not that's going to bite them in the back as time goes on and as Red starts to park the stack to stop movement.
Speaking of rockets, it looks like they had 2 up for a second, both going down to Taser though. Very interesting to see him pushing up here, trying to get past this Rocketeer. Ares though, going to be able to take him out from the top. We see View now coming in the car, dropping in on one, getting back to a campy corner here as Rockets get back up. Another one goes down to Vune as it comes into Health Bunker. Pushes in here, and we're seeing a lot of time being eaten up around this curve by SITH, but UNSC still at 41% and at towards the final curve with almost 4 minutes left on the clock. So we do see this constant cart focus coming in, especially as UNSC hops back on the cart, hits that 45 percentile, and gets extremely close to checkpoint. As we can see them inching forward here as the push kind of slows from SITH. As we can see in our bottom camera, as they enter the checkpoint hole, finally getting stopped by SITH in a small group up. But it doesn't seem like it's going to be quite enough to stop the rampage of Sandman here. Never mind. Gets taken out by Vune. As he hops on cart, tries to do as much defense as possible. 3 minutes left on the clock now. UNSC at about 50%. Coming right into that checkpoint area. Vune not going to be able to take out who was in there until now. Does take out Rusty as Taser comes and gets viewed. Does go down to war news.
Yeah.
Cart.
I was just
chugging.
I couldn't help but exclaim earlier when Vune was disrupting like that. I get the idea of trying to put some aggression on your opponents. Oftentimes, teams that are expecting to be outskilled can get intimidated to an extent that they play too passively in a game that's meant to be so extremely aggressive all the time, and actually lose out where they could win out by being much more aggressive than a team expects. Obviously, that's what Vune was trying to do, but so much cart movement happened during that time that UNSC managed to make checkpoint with 2.5 minutes left. And where otherwise SITH wasn't probably going to hold them up from checkpoint, but was making a surprising amount of time here and still has several players behind the objective. And all that being said, UNSC still moving the cart, not losing focus too much despite the distractions that players like Warners are trying to set up here. And this is a strong position, to be clear, but UNSC is used to extremely high accuracy of a lot of these very top Dasher players, and has a contingency in place for how to try and hide on the cart, especially when you have a player like Crusader, who is one of the better cart riders in the whole league, and in order to not lose time while also not taking the bait and sending players backwards when you want them forwards at all times. And that's exactly what UNC is going for now, and why they're making such excellent time in this first checkpoint so far.
They're just keeping their eyes focused on cart. We saw Rusty take a couple of fights here, not before his teammate was on cart though. Does get 2 here. Rusty right now at a 5 kill streak. I want to keep watching him, see how he goes about it here, but no, gets double teamed by Ares and his teammate, who does go down to Taser. Looks like he's not going to play on cart, do a little bit more disruptive work. Takes out Jason Bourne from across the gap here, and chases down Vune so he can't do any damage to cart. It looks like SITH right now is just kind of trickling one by one, where they seem to need a larger push than that to be able to stop the cart force of Rusty and the rest of UNSC here as they move towards under the bridges and around the curve. Jake, I want your opinions on this. What are you seeing right now? What are your opinions? What are your thoughts? What do you think is going to happen in the rest of this match? No, you don't want to give thoughts? That's all good.
All right. We'll take it from here. Don't worry about that. So, basically, I've got one thing going through my head, which is the extreme contrast between Rusty POV and Taser POV. Obviously, looking at scoreboard, Sandman, Rusty, Taser are the Doom trio, getting kill after kill on the part of UNSC and causing absolute hell for SITH, while Crusader and 1UP Crit just focus on that objective. But just watching these three POVs, and especially the difference between Rusty and Taser, it's really hard when you're playing at any level of Hyperdash to deal with a very extremely different playstyle for two players who are doing the same role. Rusty and Taser, both trying to get kills, be aggressive, make some space for the cart riders to ride cart. But Rusty, so fast and loose and dashing all up in your face, whereas Taser seems to be a lot more defensive. It's hard, unless you see what player you're playing against, to make the decision and the distinction of how you should be moving around. And in my experience, that makes it so much harder to play against a team, even outside of the killing ability. That huge difference in playstyle makes recognizing what you have to do in moments to moments that much more difficult, and that's why we see UNSC with 5 minutes left on the clock, pushing that card briefly, double stacking it even, despite Vune getting some flanks. Just that roles-wise focus that UNSC has, and having players like Sandman, who are the main killers for their team right now, not afraid to pull up and kind of off loadout with the shield just to get that last couple percent. So difficult to deal with this sort of mindset of doing whatever it takes to win and trying to confuse and confound your enemies just long enough to get to that 100%. Exactly what UNSC is trying to do here, and what SITH is struggling to hold off.
Yeah, SITH just really trying their hardest. Jason Bourne, we see with the Rockets, literally trying to camp in his spawn, is able to take out Taser, and a couple good on the cart as well. He does have a third, but UNSC already at 97%. As we saw earlier, I do want to pull attention to that shield shotgun combo that we don't see very often, and how he's putting the shield upside down. So Gollum, can you real quickly tell me why that shield upside down is very important to shield gameplay, which we don't even really see often? But I think it's very important.
So, first of all, if you can break your wrist enough to hold the shield upside down, you are going to immediately have an improvement in your life. And before I go through that, no, SITH does hold here. Good for them. Immediate improvement in your livelihood. No, 100% for UNSC.
Oh my god, there it is.
They snuck somebody behind. They got
with the shield sneaking behind, hopefully pushing around to get that 100% as a side switch. Let's talk about that play a little bit more, shall we?
Right. So the top of the shield, the wide side of the shield, is much harder to see through than the bottom half of it, which is reason alone to hold it upside down if you can. But also your head is so much smaller than the rest of your body that may seem intuitive and obvious, but if you're able to hold the shield upside down, the wide part blocks your legs, the thin part blocks your head. Percentage-wise, you are much more protected than holding it right side up. You get much better visibility. You can shoot around the shield too. I wonder if SITH is going to try and pull out this strategy. A lot of explosives on the part of UNSC here on the opener though. Crusader dancing around with the shocks, or the rockets, hanging out with 1UP Crit with the shocks, and Rusty with the shotguns. Lots of heavies here.
Yeah, so many heavies just trying to, I assume, get as many kills as they can as Car comes out here, but Crusader goes down!
Good trade.
Nice trade. Jason Bourne somehow taking himself out as we see in the kill feed as Crusader respawns, trying to get his rockets back, hopefully trying to cause a little ruckus here as Cart is stopped towards the very beginning here. Already about 40 seconds down, Crusader has to wait on this health pick up now. Never mind, he goes to Marzer to get it and takes himself out while going for the self-defense kill on Typhoon.
I just want to say UNSC is playing this so safe with how dominant their blue side was. They really could be eating up much more of SITH's time here, holding them much better at this point in the map. Meanwhile, SITH has stayed focused on that objective and what they have to do. As long as they don't get disrupted too hard, they're actually making pretty decent time here. Up until the point where the spawn advantage eventually starts to shift, SITH is doing very well for themselves. I just need to point that out.
Yeah, SITH doing a phenomenal job, but I think I know the reason as to UNSC's slow style of push here, and I think it's energy consumption.
Must be.
Payloads are for a high-level team like UNSC playing against a less experienced team like SITH is going to be very easy to defend with simple strategies that they've come up with that maybe some less experienced players haven't seen as much. So I think right now they're just taking the time before they employ said strategies and kind of taking a backseat. As we can see, Crusader not just going crazy with those rockets, but firing off just one by one, keeping it slow. The rest of UNSC just kind of holding their positions, not necessarily trying to get up and in the face. We see Sandmen taking out areas of war in the kill feed with the SMGs. I think it's an energy consumption because Domination is also a very strategy and brain and kill heavy game mode, as to where you kind of want to save your energy anytime you can, especially for UNSC here on Red Side Canyon, where they can easily get a stop around this corner coming up here. And the stops they have been getting, especially up this ramp here, as they have been stopping Cart. Cart hasn't moved. We're about 30 seconds in, and they're not even at 30% yet.
Yeah, and I will say, as far as consumption goes, or like serving things goes, I could see a world where UNSC is trying to hold back some of their early strategy if they expect to play this map against another top dasher team, and is more going with a more passive style in order to ensure that they can set up at this point in the map where the cart is starting to go uphill and continuing to go uphill, and just trying to get a killer hold and never let SITH get behind them. I bet their strategy hinges around making sure that as long as SITH doesn't get behind them, they can just outskill them in one direction. They don't have to try and outskill them in two directions, so that might end up being a losing battle. Cart is starting to round this corner. 2 minutes 38 seconds. It is not looking good for making checkpoint, but still feasible, given the pace that this game has been going. If SITH can get some solid pushes, and especially get those flanks that UNSC has been trying so hard to protect, they might be able to make something happen. Good kill out of Typhoon there. But
does immediately get
locked
taken
in
out by
with
the
rockets.
Crusader rocket, yeah.
Yeah.
I do want to go back to what you said about strategy conservation as well, because this is very interesting and a very interesting point you bring up here, because UNSC obviously has to fight for through the rest of the playoffs, and we know that other teams are watching this from the chat. Give a hoot and a holler if you're in the playoffs, teams. Just a little chat interaction there.
Right,
give a little
right.
hoot and a holler if your team's in the playoffs. But UNSC not trying to give away their strategies to our wonderful live chat and community here. So it is very interesting you bring that up, because I don't think they really need to use their high tier strategies against a team like SITH, who has 1 minute 30 seconds left and is just getting around this corner. So I think that's a very, very good point circling back on.
Yeah, and Crusader hanging way back, making sure, despite not seeing a lot of people for a very long time in Hyperdash terms, to not get overly aggressive and really rely on that forward shield of his teammates' killing ability is exactly what you want to do in this situation here, especially on Canyon of all payloads, is rely on your teammates to be a front line. Maintain your dashes to get away from any flanker who desperately somehow manages to get through that flank, uses all their dashes to fight you, and then loses out, ends out in the open, and you don't get punished for it at all. That's kind of the goal of the Rocket team, is to sit looking pretty way in the back line, let their teammates do all the hard work, occasionally get a kill on Cart, and look out for Warner's flank.
Yeah, speaking of that hard work,
yeah.
It looks like we can see it come into effect here as the clock hits 30 seconds, and
25
SITH
seconds.
is only at 40%. So it looks like this is going to be a pre-check here. They haven't even fully rounded the corner yet. UNSC just making sure they can prevent an overtime in the next 15 seconds here. Keep the team down as much as they can with their lethal gunplay. Shooting down the alley here. Taser goes down to the Rockets. Or no, Taser doesn't go down to the Rockets. Taser's teammate helps him out with his skirmish with the Rockets as the clock ticks down to 0, and UNSC takes the Canyon 100% to 42%. Jake, let's see some of these scores.
Well-timed rockets at the end there. You saw two Sith, by the time we got there, it was two Sith corpses, but two Sith players who were on the cart getting hit by rockets right at the last second, and it's really hard to avoid a Rocketeer that knows that timing, those players trying to get an overtime are not going to get it because of that Rocketeer timing, where otherwise if they had even just a split millisecond of a moment left alive after the timer went down, they would have another 5 or so seconds to try and keep pushing that card. Not going to happen here. For UNSC, Rusty top scoring and top killing, nearly a 2 KD, and Typhood top killing and top scoring for his team. He was playing out of his mind. The only one on his team to go positive, and positive he did. I liked the plays that I saw out of that guy and out of a lot of the players on SITH, but UNSC is just the team to beat this season. And that is a difficult thing to do in and of itself.
Yeah, UNSC, just a powerhouse for any team, let alone SITH. I mean, we saw most of their players go negative there, drawing attention to the scores and the kills here. As we saw, Typhoon going off 51 and 46, going positive. Only one on SITH to go positive.
Yeah,
and obviously
not that kills are everything. Like I did say that, and we say that, but we know that like SITH, especially in their early side when they were blue, they were getting out killed even then, but they stayed focused on that objective, and that's what allowed them to get even as far as they did. And that is a difficult thing to do on our next map, Volcano. Domination, very different from Payload. Very, very different. You want to go over the basics of how Domination works, Graphics?
Yeah, so for any new viewers here, Domination is like our big kills game mode. Payload's a little more objective focused. I'd say Domination's a little more kill focused, with a lot of objective focus needed to be able to play it very well. But Domination, basically the gist, is that there are 3 buttons scattered across the map. One towards the blue spawn, one towards the red spawn, and one towards the middle. These players are going to try to capture all 3 buttons at the same time, have them pressed in their color, to be able to get a point. First to 3 points wins, or whoever has the most points at the end of 25 minutes. Usually they don't go that long, but in Dash League we've seen many 25-minute dominations. But thinking about the map here, Volcano, it's a very different Domination map. Obviously, the newest map in the game outside of Stadium reworks, and it's very large. If there's one thing I can say about Volcano, it's very large while also being very small. If you think about the spawn sections, there's a lot of secret passageways, there's a lot of smaller areas, there's a huge open space by each button. But when you think about the inside of the Volcano, the B button area, it starts to get a little more close quarters. Bunch of entrances from both spawns, but it gets pretty close quarters, Gollum. Give me a little testament about fighting in that Volcano.
I mean, you hit the nail right on the head. It's large. It's the distances from one button to the next are very long compared to some of the other 2 Domination maps, Waterway and Quarry. But there's so many pathways to get where you want to go that outside of a couple main routes, you have a decent chance of not encountering anybody unless the team you're playing against is going out of their way to try and split their focus and watch all different routes to each button. And it really depends on the team strategy, what they have going here, but the pathways to the different buttons are a big sticking point, and the length to the buttons is what makes this so different. More than the pathways, more than the verticality on the central button on B, and you'll see what I mean when we get into the map. The distance to the buttons is what makes this so different from Quarry and Waterway. Specifically, the distance from your spawn to either your home button or B. If you are getting, if your team has all 3 buttons and the countdown's going, the enemy team can't respawn during that time until they hit at least one of those buttons back to their color. And during that countdown time, because your team can't respawn, but your respawn timer keeps ticking, if you're in the countdown for a while and your teammate gets a counter, the rest of your team respawns, but if they had to suicide die for that counter and another countdown starts as the enemy team hits the button, you can't respawn again, and you just made it out of the death screen into your spawn. And the dash distance to your home button or to B button is longer than either Quarry or Waterway. Unless you get 1 kill to get 1 more dash, if you just respawn and the countdown just got reset, you will not make it to the button in time to counter. And that plays a huge effect into how teams play this map, into what strategy they have going on here. A fresh respawn person cannot be relied on to get a counter. You have to position your team based around that fact. Let's see how the game opens here.
Yeah, so it looks like we're going to open with Rusty pushing right into that B, and as you can see, he's only down to 2 dashes, where in a push like that on any other map, he would probably be at around 3, as he pushes back towards A spawn and comes back. As UNSC gets their first countdown, SITH counters at C, as Rusty, we see, pushes in towards the blue spawn, turns around, not going to chase though, and goes back to B, taking a look.
Buttons?
Yeah, UNSC with 2 buttons right now. They did get a very early countdown, but it looks like SITH has been able to set to defend C. Never mind, as number 3 pushes in, I think that's Rusty, pushes in. Does go down to Jason Bourne. And C button goes back to control of SITH, but there was no countdown there because SITH was able to take hold of B for a very small amount of time. Jason Bourne trying to pick a fight, doesn't go fully through with it. Gets the button at B though, and is able to take out Rusty. 3 counters. It looks like SITH had a countdown there, which is kind of shocking here.
Another countdown for SITH?
This could be it. Only 2 people up.
Please.
There's a kill. SITH gets a point.
UNSC gets wiped. SITH gets a point. Are you kidding me?
Oh my gosh, this could be the miracle you were talking about earlier, man.
SITH is playing the map. That is something I wanted to mention. UNSC playing their game, but SITH is playing the map. And on Volcano, more than Quarry, more than Waterway, you really have to play the map. And clearly it's working out for SITH. UNSC has to take these guys seriously. This is not going to be the repeat of the dominant Payload UNSC pre-checkpoint win that we saw earlier. SITH staying scrappy, looking for that team wipe, and that countdown is going in with the lead right now. Love to see it. Love to see the way that Ares of War is getting kill after kill on B. Can they keep it up, or will UNSC be able to get back here?
He pushed to C. Doesn't look like it was enough. Gives a little taser. Gives a little wave to him.
Yeah.
Unfortunate.
Like
little heartbreaking to him. He had a crazy kill streak as well.
Shoots his teammate too.
Yeah. Feeling a little bit of the hype here. Feeling a little bit of the pressure as well. As SITH scores a point, taser immediately able to get the counter though from the top rope. It looks like SITH constantly countering though. SITH coming down with lots of countdowns. Taser trying to take him out. Does get viewed down and gets the armor. A huge power play for UNSC here, as he could try to push up and take the button here. There's a countdown for UNSC. Only 3 people up. 2 people up. Another countdown. Taser takes one out. 2 people up. 1 man up.
Just Warners.
They need to counter here.
Warners. Warners was out of position. Tried to go for that button in the bottom right side screen. We saw that he couldn't quite make it. UNSC scores their first point. If SITH doesn't get discouraged by that first point, though, I think they can keep up the momentum. We'll have to wait and see whether UNSC has made a significant change because of that first point, though. And if they're going to get a dominant 3-0 sweep from this point forward, or SITH is going to continue to play scrappy and get countdowns and look for that unexpected 5-player wipe.
Yeah, so we saw it happen before. But I want to talk about when we saw it happen. Right now, there's 21 minutes and 25 seconds left on the clock. The clock in Domination counts down from 25 minutes. That means 2 points have been scored in 4 minutes. That's roughly 2 minutes per point, which is very shocking, especially for a play of this caliber. As we see UNSC takes the C button, we can see how the clock, well, obviously right now, just stopped for the countdown. UNSC keeps trying to get it. SITH able to counter, but usually we see a lot longer button holds here. Usually it's these dasher tier matches that end up going to that clock when it hits 0. But right now we're seeing some very fast gameplay coming from both teams as Hyperdash is able to pick off 1. And UNSC gets another countdown. 3 still up. A does get reclaimed by SITH. So Gollum, I want you to talk a little bit about the clock here. as it ticks down for a couple of countdowns here from UNSC's side.
Well, you mentioned it earlier already that the number of points scored this early on is frankly pretty baffling. The fact that it's 2 points scored, one for each team, and not a one-sided sweep is fairly unprecedented, all things considered. And I'm very impressed that SITH is holding on for so long and getting counters and getting into UNSC's base. Clearly, they have studied the way this is going to work, but ultimately, when it comes to the clock, when it comes to the time left, even though SITH seems to have the better strategy, UNSC still the more dominant team of killers in my experience and in my perceptions. And with more time played on the map, it slowly ticks into UNSC's favor that they're going to adapt well enough to the way SITH plays and where players are positioned, and they're not going to get caught unawares like they did in the beginning, and they might be able to bring this match back. SITH really wants to close this match out quicker, if possible, and a good example of that is this UNSC countdown with 3 SITH players alive, one of them only freshly respawning.
Oh, and it looks like, oh, that's going to be
Second
another point for UNSC. Kind of going into a snowball effect here. Haven't brought this up in a few, seasons, but I want to call attention to the snowball effect that we've seen as a trend through Dash League's history. Gollum, you can attest to this. But usually when a team scores a point and then another point, you know a third is going to be on the way.
It's on its way, yeah.
It's a morale thing, it's a skill level thing, it's every factor combined into one snowball, tumbling down a hill with a couple of Charlie Brown.
UNSC wins. There you go.
UNSC wins.
Snowball
There's that snowball
effect, like you were saying.
It just rolled down the hill. SITH, I guess, lost their morale, or just kept getting dominated and taken out as we look at these scores here. Looks like kills are actually kind of even across 3 members of SITH and all of UNSC. Outside of Darko's top killing, but not top scoring, goes to show you the importance of Rusty pressing those buttons. They're only going even, not necessarily going positive, but still hitting the top of the leaderboards and getting that little lobby trophy there. Just off the fact of him pressing all the buttons. I
am supremely impressed with the way that SITH played that map. Against the top seed in Dash League Season 7, they got the first point and played a fairly back and forth game for the rest of that map's time. UNSC won 3-1. It's not unexpected that they were going to win that map, but clearly SITH is a solid team of solid players. They definitely deserve to be in the Dasher tier, but UNSC will be moving on in the playoffs. Thank you all for watching. And thank you, of course, Gravix, for commentating too. Loved your insight.
Man. My pleasure. I'm happy to be back.
And Jake, thank you for casting this match. We'll see you all in the next match. Goodbye, everybody.